and welcome to the For Evansville podcast. My name is Adrian. I'm your host. And we just have this podcast because we don't talk about just living in Evansville, but living for Evansville. And we like to highlight people and organizations contributing to the flourishing of our city. So today I have Sergeant Josh Brewer and Mario Reid with me today. So welcome. Thanks for being here. I love that you guys are in uniform. I think you intimidated everybody in the downstairs in the lobby, what's going on? But yes, thank you. And I just wanted you guys to talk about your roles first. Maybe just introduce yourself and what you do, and then we'll dive in a little deeper into that.
Sounds good. Well, first of all, thank you for having us. We appreciate it. And I'm Sergeant Josh Brewer. I'm over our crime prevention unit. I am a pretty freshly new sergeant. I was promoted in January, so getting my feet under me and learning what it's like to, one, be a sergeant, and two, over a specialty unit like our crime prevention unit. I've been on the police department a little over 10 years. Previously, I served as our homeless liaison officer. I also worked motor patrol across second and third shift, pretty much everywhere in the city, and was a field training officer for a couple of years while I served in that role as well, where I trained new police officers as they came onto the department. But as of right now, like I said, I'm over the crime prevention unit, and with that, we've brought in our homeless outreach program and our mental health outreach program, which will bring in Officer Reid.
I am Mario Reid. I'm the mental health and homeless liaison for the Evansville Police Department. I'm also a part of the crime prevention office, which is under special operations for the Evansville Police Department. And in my role, I kind of do a three function job. Function one would be outreach and community outreach and engagement and education on issues that people experiencing homelessness or people with mental illness are experiencing, and how to get them the help that they need, and educate families and individuals on resources and things that are out there. Then I also work as an investigator. If homelessness or mental health is a driver in crimes, I usually work those and try to not only work them from the criminal side, but also work from a civil side to get those individuals that may be involved in the criminal justice system as a result of their mental health or homelessness, and help them get into a place where that is no longer the case. And then I also coordinate our crisis intervention system for our area. And the crisis intervention is a model that's based off of the Memphis crisis intervention model, where it creates a higher level of training and higher level of expertise for law enforcement officers, so that they can address and meet people that are having mental health crisis or narcotic crisis, and help de-escalate the situation, help get them to a hospital. And I also liaison with Southwestern Behavioral Health's crisis unit. And then we also, with the homeless, the Evansville Commission on Homelessness, we're also working on developing a task force that works with high-risk, high-need individuals with mental illness and homelessness. And this is a collaborative team, collaborative interdisciplinary team that includes medical professionals, representatives from the hospital systems, and representatives from our mental health centers in our area.
So what you're saying is you're not very busy. That's a lot. Okay.
I got a lot of help from the community.
Yeah, sure.
Look, a lot of the things is just coordinating and being part of getting those together. I liaison with Southwest, and so I'm not just a team of one. I've got my whole unit that supports, and we also have a lot of staff from Southwestern Behavioral Health that kind of make those things happen.
Yeah. So it sounds like there are a lot of things that are connected that maybe people haven't made that connection before, like homelessness and mental health and crisis situations. Have you seen that they all just kind of play a role, or could you speak into that? Either one of you?
Yeah, just to, piggyback off what he was saying and your question there is there is a lot of collaboration that occurs within our city. We do a really good job at that. 2019 is when we first started the homeless outreach program. With that, we started getting involved with Aurora, the local shelters, United Caring Shelter, Evansville Rescue Mission, Ruth's House of Bread and Peace, YWCA, Ozanam, Echo Housing, Echo Health, all of these agencies. Yeah. We were able to come to the table and provide. Law enforcement was really a missing link in the chain that we didn't realize, one, that we were missing as police officers, and also I believe the social service agencies that were serving the homeless population, I don't think they realized it either. And what a valuable piece we were able to bring, and now we are actually members of the Mayor's Commission on Homelessness, so we meet monthly with these agencies, also with the Homeless Services Council, to where, we're even able to provide. It's really cool because as first responders, we may be somebody's first contact that they have when they become homeless. We'll get calls, hey, I just got kicked out of my apartment. I got kicked out of my house. I have nowhere to go. What do I do? We could be that first person they come into contact with when they're experiencing homelessness. And so we now have the relationships, not only with individuals experiencing with homelessness, we also have relationships with the service providers. That way, for the most part, I can call somebody, or Officer Reid or another officer on the street can call somebody with one of these agencies, and we can get them connected pretty quickly. And also be able to provide documentation, like police contacts. Like if I encounter somebody that's sleeping on a street corner or sleeping in a car in a parking lot, I can provide that documentation to Aurora, who then can submit that to the state when they're trying to prove somebody's homelessness so they qualify for certain housing vouchers. So definitely very unique and a cool role that we get to play that we didn't realize we were missing for a long time.
Because one of the things that we've seen over time is there are individuals who are people who are experiencing homelessness, and also there are also people that maybe have narcotics and mental health issues. And like Josh was saying, we were able to document that. But there's one thing that we were finding is there's individuals that were either people that are homeless or people that are experiencing these crises, and they would go to the ER repeatedly, or maybe they had a therapist, or they had, they are getting some of the resources, but depending on the resource and depending on the level of intensity of the ailment that person is experiencing, if I am a person with a mental illness, let's say schizophrenia, if I am used to the system and I know that, and unfortunately a lot of the medications they have for a lot of the psychotic disorders and things like that have terrible side effects, but I've been compliant with medication, I've been doing what I need to do, but then I feel like I'm getting better, so I stop taking the medication, so I kind of slide back down, but I don't want anyone to know because, maybe I've been placed in the hospital for a whole, or maybe I went to jail because of some of these things in the past. And so I will go to my therapist, who I see once a month for 20 minutes, and say I'm fine. But at 3 a.m. when I'm hearing voices or I'm having manic behavior, that communication never happens. That communication of what police were dealing with at 3 a.m. never makes it to the therapist. And so us being that link, we're able to share that information. And just to clarify, those providers aren't really sharing information with us.
Sure.
For confidentiality reasons, but we can always report those to the mental health facilities.
Well, that just seems like a holistic approach to a person rather than dealing with crises as they come. You're looking at a whole person and everything they're dealing with and being able to say, okay, like you've had these problems in the past, maybe we need to approach it in a different way, and looking at them. That's really cool. So what I was wondering is you were mentioning this huge collaboration between a bunch of organizations in Evansville, both of you. And do you think that, I don't know what your pulse is on other cities, but do you think that's unique to Evansville?
Absolutely.
Yes. I think there are some cities that have programs that are similar, but I think, and we've looked at some. You even visited one. I've been to a few conferences where we've been to a few conferences to meet people from around the country that are kind of doing the same work. But I think the one thing that's unique to our area, especially Evansville, is how our program kind of developed more organically. If that makes sense. It was a person, one of the directors at Southwestern Behavioral always said, when you create a system, you don't want to have, and it's the old school way of doing it, you have all the decision makers up here who are never going to be on the ground doing things, saying, hey, we're going to do this and make it work. This was everyone on all levels coming together and developing something and really finding, and I got to credit our chief of police and our mayor of having a great idea for mental health and homelessness, and then finding people that they thought were going to be able to make it happen and say, hey, this is our dream, but you guys are doing it, and giving us the autonomy to develop and build a program.
Oh, that's incredible. So you had mentioned the idea of community policing. So could you explain what that is and how is that different from normal policing?
Right. I'll start on this one and then community policing, even when we were only doing, even working on patrol, I believe that every officer within the Evansville Police Department is a community police officer. We have a, quote, community policing unit, / crime prevention unit, kind of hold a couple hats there. But every officer should have community policing in mind, which is, forming relationships with, you work a beat, forming relationships with the residents in your beat, the business owners, the stakeholders, really getting out there, putting yourself out there so that you can get a pulse on what's going on in the area you work. So really it's being plugged in, just knowing the issues that are going on, knowing your people. Again, my view is probably a little too simplistic, but it's all about relationships for me. If you know me, if I'm just an officer that drives through your neighborhood and doesn't stop,
right,
and doesn't interact with you unless it's a crime occurring or something negative, then I, as a police officer, become jaded because all I'm seeing is the bad stuff going on in the city. And then also the community members see me as, maybe I'm just the tyrant that's, deals with stuff when it happens. But if I make the effort to put myself out there, and I do believe, we drive around in these cars and wear this uniform, I do believe the onus is on us to get out of that car and stop, say hi, talk to people, introduce ourselves. So I believe that. And again, if you know me as, when I get out of that car, that's Josh. I trust Josh, not just an officer getting out of a car because, with a lot of things that have happened over the past 5 to 10 years, we really have to, invest in that, invest in our communities and invest in each other. So again, relationships, bottom line.
And I believe that philosophy of relationship, not only is that, I think, part of the Evansville Police Department's mission. I mean, the first line of our mission statement is in partnership with the community. And so that is a relationship. And in the work that we do, especially as far as the outreach piece and the community policing, the crime prevention office and a crime prevention community policing concept, when you think about that idea of a relationship is not always what people think. Like my best friend's part of that relationship, or my spouse is that relationship. A relationship can be any connection or interaction you have with someone, whether you're on a Mets bus sitting across from someone and you nod at them and they nod back. That was a relationship. That's the beginning of a relationship. And if you start thinking about how you have your relationships, whether it's with coworkers or family, friends, when they're healthy relationships, you have boundaries. And a lot of times boundaries for people are, good boundaries. Like, I am going to respect you, you're going to respect me. I'm going to trust you, you trust me. But any healthy relationship with those boundaries, if you don't have an enforcement or an accountability step with that relationship, and I tell people a story a lot, even like as a person that's married and has kids, we have boundaries within our home.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're going to mutually respect each other, or even if me and my wife don't agree, we're going to mutually respect each other and speak with love. And if someone steps outside of that, it's on us to respect that boundary, say, oops, I made a mistake, or remember our boundaries that we've discussed in the past, and this is part of what we said we were going to do for our family, and having that accountability step. And I think that you take that out in the community when we're working with individuals at any time. That is a relationship. We want to build a relationship with them. We want to build that trust. We want to build those things. But if I don't follow through, there should be accountability steps for me. But I also hold the individuals that I work with in the community accountable as well. And if you don't do that, I have to take some kind of accountability step to enforce that boundary so our relationship stays healthy. And so when we focus on people and make it a people first thing, and have people first language, and look at it as a relationship and interpersonal relationships, I think that makes all the difference for being successful with community policing. You take that at a broader, take it broader for the department or for the city as a whole and our community as a whole. If we all focus on our relationships that we have within the community, with each other, and with the entities that be, for example, our relationship with Southwest, our relationship with Fort Evansville, our relationship with the police department, that changes the language and that changes our mindset and mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a more of a cooperative approach and a relationship approach to crime prevention in our community.
Yeah. So last week's episode, we actually had the mayor on here, and he was talking about that same idea of just relationships and how during time of COVID, those relationships were already built and established. So when crisis did happen, they were already there and in place, and it made the response easier. And I think what you guys are talking about can translate now. Like, if you have relationships with people when crisis strikes, those relationships have already been built so that you can have those boundaries or actions, and that relationship is already there, which I think, is so important that we do have those relationships. And he was even going, even deeper and saying our neighborhoods should be like that. We should know our neighbors. We should be aware of them. We should have a kind of a pulse on our own neighborhoods, our own neighbors, in case something were to go wrong, or we can just take care of each other and be good neighbors. So I know that's a concern for our community, is just this idea of like group violence and even gun violence, and that just seems to be on the rise here, at least in the news. We hear that's what we hear as just citizens. And so, is there a way our community and this kind of community policing can get involved somehow with that, or like, what do we need to be aware of? Talk about that.
Yeah, and that's very real. I mean, you turn on the TV and watch the local news, or whether you get your news media from social media. I think the last couple of weekends, there's been multiple shootings, and they definitely are on the rise here in Evansville, and they can be contributed to group violence. Right now, so we're involved in a partnership with numerous agencies in our city, and we actually implemented a program called Group Violence Intervention. And this is something that's been done in various cities around the country that has been successful in reducing group-involved violence. We found that as far as all of the shootings in our city, 0.08% of the population is responsible or involved in that. Mm-hmm. But then it does seem to, it hijacks the news, it hijacks certain areas of town and things like that. Right. And it's just not, it's a very small portion of people. So we're trying to address that when we do have these incidents, or there's a propensity for a violent incident. we go out and try to make contact prior to a crisis, or maybe immediately after a crisis because we didn't catch it in time. Maybe with a victim, with an acquaintance, a friend, a mother, grandmother, neighbor, sibling. We go out, we knock on doors, and basically have a pretty blunt conversation, but a very usually positive conversation where, hey, your name's been associated. We're not saying you're involved. We're not here in enforcement action. We're here because, one, we don't want to see you dead. We don't want to see you in prison. We want to see you flourish here in Evansville, or help you flourish somewhere else if you need to get out of Evansville because of the situation you're in. So we have various community partners that we meet with, whether the services they offer are housing, education, help with some utility bills, anything from diapers, baby formula, food, basically any resource you can think of. And we also have a nice little card we made that we hand out that has a QR code on it that they hit that with their phone, and it brings up the Vanderburgh County Resource Guide. So again, us going out there in a non-enforcement capacity of what can we do? We want to help. There's something going on here. And then, some people have been receptive, some have not. And if they are receptive, we link them to that community partner who then reaches out and then continues that relationship. A lot of times, people may not want us involved. We can stay as involved as they'd like us to be. Or we can hand it off to that community partner and we back away. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to that.
Well, you said something that kind of triggered something for me, that sometimes when we do meet, especially with people that I like to call them periphery, they're not the target of it. They're family members, or maybe a younger brother, younger sister, or a girlfriend, or someone that's on the outside of that. It's not directly involved. But one thing I've noticed after doing this for a little bit is, and something that actually causes not just problems for our GVI, but also causes problem for our mental health and homeless cases and things, are individuals who, and I believe their heart's in the right place, but they create a situation that enables harmful behavior from their family members. And instead of focusing on the person's behavior, they try to they protect them from natural consequences. And it's a form of enabling, really. And we see that, people hear about enabling when it comes to maybe a person that has a narcotics or substance issue. But when we start branching it out to someone who has a mental illness or someone involved in group violence, then it's like, well, I don't want anyone in my family to go to jail. I don't want them to have to do these things. And then I say, well, if you look at the big picture, if these behaviors continue, whether it's a mental illness or a substance issue or gang violence, if you don't let consequences in a more controlled manner happen, the end result is that person's going to die as a result of something that we could get in and fix. And I remember we went to do one of our gang violence intervention contacts, and repeatedly this parent of this individual that's involved, my child would never be there, was not there. And I'm like, I had just looked at surveillance video that actually showed that individual there. And it's like, we weren't even there for an enforcement thing, but that's your first go-to is, I'm going to get this person out of trouble, when here is a situation where no one got hurt, but here's an opportunity that we could have been like, here's a learning opportunity. Let's talk about some natural consequences for being engaged in that. And they were just already spinning up a story to do that. And so when you make those excuses and you take away those natural consequences, we put us back in a position where someone never really holds them accountable for that. and violates our societal boundaries that not only can end up really being devastating for that individual, but can also be devastating for others.
Right. So, well, you're sharing a story here, but do you have, just in the whole community policing idea, do you have stories that you would like to share that are encouraging for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got a couple. First one, this is kind of one of our biggest successes and one of our earliest, when we first started the homeless outreach program. We had an individual that had been arrested over 80 times in Vanderbilt County. Wow. Okay. Every police department knew who this gentleman was. Mm-hmm. And when you heard his name, you were like, oh, not again. So almost immediately, once I started as the homeless liaison officer, I was having continuous interactions with this individual and started collaborating with Aurora, Echo Health, and we were able to, a lot of times he was diagnosed schizophrenic, not medicated, self-medicating with any drug he could get his hands on, always kind of squatting whenever he could find a vacant house, squatting in it, and was shot actually at the Fall Festival.
Can I just give one thing on that? This individual that before the Fall Festival, we were told to go find him, to ban him, and tell him not to come to the Fall Festival.
And then he got shot there.
Yeah, but like just to paint this picture, because this is one that I always add. But when from the top they say you need to find this individual and remind them that they cannot come to the Fall Festival, and that was been for years.
Oh my goodness.
But had caused over, I think, $150,000 of damage to some AT&T electrical wiring when he started a fire underneath one of our bridges. Had been housed on multiple occasions, however, could not keep his housing because of the voices in his head were telling him there was something in the walls, and he'd tear his walls apart. Okay. He'd tear the house apart. Therefore, any landlord, I'm done. Right. So gentleman could not stay housed. He also been hit by a car too. But he's going to die. He's not able to sustain in the community. So how are we going to solve this? And he did get arrested on a trespass charge. It's a misdemeanor for trespassing into one of a vacant home. So he was arrested, and so we started thinking outside the box. And that's what a lot of this has been. It's just, hey, kind of paving a way that's not there, trying new things. I requested a letter from one of the case managers at Aurora. Hey, please document all of your history with this gentleman. How you've helped him get housed. He's lost that housing. All your interactions with him. Got with Echo Health, and they were able to provide some history on his diagnosis. And we presented that information to the prosecutor, and we're like, hey, this guy, if we just book him into the Vanderbilt County Jail like the other 80 times,
right,
he's going to be released in a couple days, and we're going to be right back where we were at. Let's fix this. How can we fix this? So we wrote that letter. I think I had 3 letters, and I also wrote an extensive letter with all of our history with him, and requested a court-ordered mental health evaluation, a competency evaluation. Was told by numerous people, never going to happen. It costs too much money. They're not going to do this on a misdemeanor case. Don't really know why you're trying. They granted it. Again, thinking outside the box, pushing boundaries, and healthy boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah, but they granted it. Had the competency evaluation, deemed incompetent. So he went to the state hospital where he was brought back to competency. He was there for a few months, came back, medicated appropriately, worked his way through mental health court. Once he gets back, he's released, and he gets an apartment. Aurora helping a lot with making sure he maintains his appointments so he stays on his medication. Again, graduated from mental health court, it's been about 3 years housed, no negative police interactions in 3 years.
Wow.
And this was a gentleman that it was weekly, if not daily.
And calls, so he's on a injectable, calls Southwestern Behavioral because they're the ones who are administrating his meds, like the week before, and reminds them that he needs medication. And that is so big for him because completely disorganized and all those things as a result of the mental illness, and now is calling to make sure. And he did call 911 once when happened to be over holiday weekend and the meds didn't come at the right time, so he called. But they were also able to hook him up with with crisis services and get that med out.
Yeah.
But he has said repeatedly, "I'm not going back."
That's amazing. That's awesome. And it just goes to show that not only are you building relationships, but you're advocating too. And you getting that letter out, having other people write letters, you're advocating for the well-being of this person. And now, look where he is. That's awesome. And so a lot of our listeners are Christians. And so I wanted to bring in that faith element. I think that's an example of Jesus. He would advocate for the poor or the disadvantaged. And so how can let's talk first on a larger scale. How can the faith community get involved in what you're doing, or at least do something like what you're doing if they can't directly get involved with you? Or like how can the faith community get involved?
So one of the main things is we've got a lot of organizations that provide services to individuals with mental illness. So if they're giving, like the Evansville Rescue Mission provides meals, not just for their residents, but for anyone 3 times a day. Even if you were down on your luck, maybe you're under the influence or something like that and can't go into any facilities, they will give you a sack lunch and water anytime you go in. And so that can't be that only can be done by people giving and engaging financially. They also take most of the providers that we work with, they take volunteers. The Rescue Mission takes volunteers all the time. United Caring Shelter does the same thing. They take volunteers to help cook meals, make meals. If you own a restaurant, you could take them food that they can serve. The other ways to get involved, like we've got with our group violence intervention, is it's not just officers going out and make these contacts. We make these contacts with people from the community, and we're always looking for individuals who want to get involved and make those connections, because I can only do so much as a law enforcement officer.
Right.
Having those, so it's supposed to be one officer and members from the community, or 1 or 2 officers from our department and 1 or 2 members of the community going and meeting those families, so that you kind of hand off to a non-law enforcement person to help build those relationships. It's like the whole mindset of, time, your personal financial treasures, and your talents. So there are all sorts of things that we are always looking for, people that may have talents or different ways of looking at things. Maybe you've got these connections here with this group or that, and just anything that you can provide. But it's really time, talents, and treasures are the ways that you can help these organizations.
One additional thing I would just like to add is we have a lack of payees in our community, and a payee is somebody that can help administer, distribute money for individuals, help them pay their bills. A lot of individuals that we interact with have disability income, so they may get a check every month, but unfortunately, because they're not able to manage it appropriately, it may be gone in the first week, and then they're scrounging for a month. And then a payee can help. Let's say we get somebody housed through Aurora, a payee can help administer make sure that rent's paid, make sure the utilities are paid, make sure there's money for food. Again, they just kind of help manage their money, which you can find more information about that on Social Security Administration website, things like that. But we have people out there, that will take advantage of and exploit vulnerable people who all of a sudden start getting a government check, a monthly check. Oh, I'll take care of you, and then take all of their money. So there are people doing that in our community and preying upon vulnerable populations. So if we had good, solid people willing to be payees, I think we could help a lot of people and affect change that way, because a lot of that is a management piece.
Well, that's time for us. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for just the work that you're doing in the community and just making a real positive change and just being for Evansville and the flourishing of our city. So thank you guys. So glad that you're here today. Thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you for having us.